which is always fun. But people have been loving it, and everybody was raving about this one coming on. Everybody's like, John Gakuru. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
John gets his own. John gets his very own live stream, and then I turn this into a podcast and so on and so forth. But I've been doing at least one live stream every day, plus a podcast every day. So I've been saying bits. I gotta pay attention. So cool thing is that with the platform I use, if anyone has a question, they can ask it as we're going.
Okay.
On Facebook and whatnot. So thanks for your time, man. I know you're busy, and it's kind of funny where there's some people in the industry that are taking this time to have weekends off, and they work Monday to Friday, and then whereas me, I'm like, if anything, I'm in the office every day of the week, just banging it out.
Yeah, I'm kind of sick of quite a few of the new phrases that we seem to be using all the time, including new normal. Is one of my least favorites.
It's like a 1980s Coke commercial. 1980, like Coca-Cola, the new normal.
Right, exactly. But this is anything but normal, and most of us don't hope that it continues. We're all looking forward to a day that the world that we remember comes back, and some sort of balance can return to our lives. But for the time being, here we are.
What have you been busy with? Because a lot of your work is really hands-on, event-driven, stuff like that. So what have you been busy with over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so we can divide that in a few ways. There's obviously what is Sweet and Chilli busy with. What am I busy with professionally in leading the Sweet and Chilli US business? Then what am I busy with personally in an effort to stay sane and not waste this time that's been forced upon us, or this kind of lifestyle that's been forced upon us recently. So from the Sweet and Chilli side, it's obviously been fairly devastating. If you're an events business that's 100%, or not 100%, but events business that that's reliant on mass gatherings. If there are no mass gatherings, there is no business. Full stop. No gray area. No place for negotiation. It is what it is. So overnight, that division of our business was essentially shuttered, and we had to kind of scramble to really understand in the first few days of this pandemic how serious is it, how long is it going to last, what events have we got on our books that are in jeopardy. And then obviously the house of cards started to tumble, and as soon as South by Southwest cancelled 4 days out from its actual date, we knew that things were going to be pretty serious. And then it was a roller coaster from there, with Coachella fairly quickly behind that. So then we knew that we needed to restructure, we needed to close our office, and we needed to work from home like everybody else. Luckily with Sweet and Chilli, we are not solely an events-based business. We also do a lot of consultancy with some of the biggest brands in the world. And that consultancy work, which is a lot of the thinking, the strategy, the planning, continued. We had to pivot into how do we remain relevant, stay in the conversation, and so we supported several brands in the US and around the world in their kind of COVID-19 strategies, pivots to online and all sorts of activities there. And now we're into kind of longer lead planning. What does January 2021 and beyond look like? And all of that work actually takes quite a long time. So we're into kind of long lead planning and consultancy, which is great. And then personally, I didn't want to waste the time, so I got myself a Peloton. If I'm going to catch something during this thing, it's going to be fitness rather than a virus, and or at least I'm going to try. That's really good fun. A couple of friends in the US set up a Peloton group. I feel like Peloton owners are the new vegans. They just won't shut up.
The new CrossFit. Peloton's the new CrossFit. Peloton's the new CrossFit.
Oh God, I know, and I feel so guilty of it. But hey, if it's a positive energy rather than a negative. It's a positive conversation, not a negative one. And so yeah, now there's now a group of us that ride every Friday morning. On Peloton. It's really good fun. So that, and then I also took up a university diploma in accounting.
Nice.
That is the area of business where I am weakest, I believe. And so I thought I'd take the opportunity to shore that up and get good with numbers in it.
So let's take it back, because I know a lot of people know you, but let's take it back to sort of where you got your start in the industry, and sort of look at that, because Sweet Chilli is relatively new for you ish, like less than a decade. Yeah. I think we first met 10 years ago. I think that came up on my Facebook memories just the other week, 2010, 2011, when you came to Victoria with Sagatiba. But how did you get in the industry? When did you get in the industry, and where?
Oh my God. So I started out as a bartender in TGI Fridays in South Hampton in the south of England, where I went to university. I joined the new store opening team. It was actually the first TGI Fridays in outside of America that they built the bricks and mortar from the foundations up. Every other Fridays was a existing building that they'd gone in and turned into a Fridays, and this one in Southampton was their first new build. So it was quite a big deal back then, many moons ago. And we had a phenomenal trainer, Flipper. She was American, came over from the States and trained us in this tiny little TGIs in Southampton, and that was kind of the start of it all. And it's been quite funny through lockdown. I've been reconnecting with old friends that I'd made at that time, and it was super cool. I'm from a single parent family, and my mum was able to afford the tuition, but I needed to work to pay for my accommodation, so I had to get a job. Bartending seemed like something I could do. When I was at school, we had what was called a sixth form social club, and I was elected the chairman of that club. And it was basically at age 16 in England, we were able to have one beer a day, and I was the manager of that social club that administered those beers to the sixth form. So it seemed like bars, bartending, and the sociability and social connection that comes with it was something I was destined for.
So what'd you go to school for?
To learn.
Did you study at university?
I went to, believe it or not, I actually started out studying naval architecture, which is the design of boats, ships, and yachts. When I finished my A-levels at school, I don't know what the North American equivalent is, but when you finish school and before you go to university, I took a gap year, and I worked for a children's charity in the UK. And they had 8 yachts, and we would take underprivileged kids from inner city areas around the UK, and we would throw them onto this yacht essentially, and we would use the yacht as a platform for youth work. Once you untie the lines and you kind of set sail, you have to work together as a team, whether you want to or not. And if you're seasick and you want to return back to shore, you are going to have to pull your socks up, figure it out, work as a team, and get the yacht back to shore. And it was an incredible experience. I was 17 and a half, maybe 18 at the time, maybe pushing 19 maybe. And I kind of through that experience wanted a life at sea, basically, or at least connected to the water. So I studied naval architecture, and then I got into my second year. No, I lie. I got into my second semester, and the mathematics of fluid movement around the hull of a yacht, or fluid dynamics, was a step too far. So I pulled out of that. And lay in a deck chair for another year and a half doing leisure management at South Hampton Stalwart University, we nicknamed it deck chair studies. It was basically the management of businesses along the water's edge. So things like sailing schools or marinas or, shipyards, that kind of thing. And while I was there at university is when I started, bartending at TGI's. And I had a couple of friends in my university group who used to come and sit at the bar, and I'd feed them free coffee at TGI Fridays, and they would take me through that day's coursework that I needed to catch up on. And, between the three of us, we got ourselves through the whole degree, which was pretty amazing.
So where was how long gap was it between this time in Southampton to moving to London and sort of doing that? Where was your big break?
So big break. At TGI Fridays, Southampton is the cruise ship port for the UK and Northern Europe. So all the cruise liners from, Cunard and the Queen Mary and what have you, all use Southampton as their home port. And TGI Fridays is near the entry and exit of the docks. So every Saturday and Sunday, cruise ships would pull into Southampton. All the old passengers would pile off, and all the new passengers would pile on. And in between that, all the bartenders would roll off the ship and into the nearest bar to get shit-faced. And the nearest bar was TGI Fridays. So they'd all pony up. And my colleagues at Fridays really couldn't stand those shifts. I loved them because the crew, there were so many American bartenders, and there was a tip culture on board. And, I would work Saturday daytime and Sunday daytime. I would volunteer those shifts. If anyone is an ex-TGI Fridays bartender, that Sunday day is kids and milkshakes. And I'd be doing a Sunday day shift. And these bartenders from cruise ships would just come and hang out, and they'd be literally every 7 days. Every Saturday would be the same bunch of people. Every Sunday be the same bunch of people. And, I became friends with quite a few of them. And eventually they said, John, you really should come and work with us on cruise ships. You'd love it. Travel the world and make cocktails. I'm like, cool. Pull your mobile phone out, put your money where your mouth is. Well, next minute, it was about 3 months later, I packed up my entire life and moved to Fort Lauderdale and joined the Sun Princess and Princess Cruises. And then I suppose my big break, I spent 4 years with Princess Cruises, sailing the Caribbean, East and West Coast USA, Hawaii, Mediterranean. And my best mate on cruise ships at the time was a guy called Jody Terrell, whose twin brother, Jamie Terrell, was the bar manager at Lab. So eventually when I quit cruise ships in Barcelona, stuck my middle finger up at the food and beverage director at the time, who I still haven't forgiven, flew to London, was repatriated rather to London. And Jody said, yeah, just go to Lab. It's on Old Compton Street in Soho, and go and ask for my twin brother, Jamie. Well, of course I walked in and, my jaw hit the ground because they're identical twins. And the rest is kind of history. Jamie said, any friend of my brother's is a friend of mine. Can you start in 9 days time? One of the bartenders was leaving. And that was January 2000, January the 9th.
Wow.
2000. Wow. So yeah, I started at Lab. I was lucky enough to literally walk in and take over from a guy called Will de la Prodier, who remains a dear friend to this day. And I bartended for 9 months, and then the general manager was leaving to take up a brand ambassador job with Grey Goose, and that left the general manager's position open. Nobody else on the team who'd been there for a long time, a lot longer than me, was willing to step into it, and they basically bullied me into taking the GM position, which I did, and I was general manager for 4.5 years.
So how did Sagatiba, or Shagatiba, however you pronounce it, you say it way better than I do.
I've forgotten. No.
How did that role sort of come around? Because you sort of helped launch it, and I've got a sort of hook for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the only job I've ever applied for was that very first job at TGI Fridays. Every other job I've got to this day, I've got either by being tapped on the shoulder and, would I consider this or that, or I've been offered it over a bar. So, when I tell this story, I usually say that, which is true, the only job I ever applied for was the first one at Fridays. Every other job and everything I have in my life, I've gotten over a bar. And that's true of the Sagatiba gig as well. After 2 years at Lab, guests at the bar would start to ask if they could, can we get these Lab cocktails? I'm doing a dinner party. Can you can you or one of the bartenders come to my place or my friend's place, whatever, and make, lab cocktails for us at home? And then at home became, just bigger and bigger and more lavish. Some celebrity daughter's, 21st birthday, and Lab was their favorite cocktail bar, and could they come and make, could we come and make rapascas and for their friends. And basically I just got bored of doing it. Not bored, that's the wrong word. I was doing it all in Lab's name, and I saw an opportunity there. So I actually created a small consulting business, which I did on the side. And that opened the door to what became Bar Total, which was my events and consultancy business, which I partnered with one of my dearest friends on the planet, Ed McAvoy. And we started doing events and consulting, and we launched big brands for Pernod Ricard, which is our biggest client. We did events for them all across the UK, and eventually we became quite well known and well regarded. It was pretty cool and pretty quick. And Sagatiba, the owner of Sagatiba, Marcos de Moraes, was looking to launch in the UK, and they were launching with a distributor called Co-Vintners, and the then sales director of Co-Vintners, Nick Gillett, told Marcos to come and see me, and we would be the agency to launch Sagatiba in the UK. We made 4,500 caipirinhas over 2 nights at the UK launches in London. And Marcos pulled me over at the end of night 2 and just said, I am absolutely stunned that this little UK consulting company can make 4,500 perfect caipirinhas. It just blown me away. Would you like to do more with Sagatiba in the UK? Would your company, Bar Total, represent Sagatiba in the UK? So I quickly said yes. But then I wanted to do a little bit more research and found out that Marcos was, just an incredible human being, huge philanthropist. He's in the world's top 20 philanthropists, independently successful and wealthy. So, to be blunt, working for a Brazilian company felt a little nervy at the time. But Marcos was solid and, an incredible human being. And so I leaned in. I said, you know what, my company won't do it, but I will sell my half of my company. I'll quit my job at Lab and I'll come on full time and work for Sagatiba exclusively. And that was the start. And it started with, London and Manchester and Edinburgh. Then it was Belfast and Dublin. And then it was, Bristol. And then it was, do you know anyone in Paris? Yeah, I know a few people. Can you go to Paris? And then it was Madrid and then Barcelona and so on and so on. And after 9 years, I'd launched Sagatiba in 62 out of its 64 countries. I was flying 500,000 miles a year, spent 48 weeks in hotels on the road. The Sagatiba team took it from the 350,000 liters when I started to a little over 1.2 million liters when I finished.
Wow. So just before I got my next question, Ryan Lane says, I love you. I hate Fernet, but I love you. Kisses and hugs.
What's up, Ryan? I love you too, brother. I don't like Jack Daniels, if that means anything.
So because going from, I think a lot of bartenders these days, they go from bartending to being asked, like what you were saying, like being asked to do a couple of events and doing pop-ups and this sort of thing. What was the biggest learning curve? Because like really, this was still all this is all pre-internet days. So it's not like you can go and freaking YouTube.
Oh my God. Thank God it was pre-internet.
Oh, exactly. You can't go on YouTube. How do I put on an event, or how do I cost that event? What were the learning curves and the sort of holy shit moments that you had sort of building out this thing? Because you not necessarily 0 to 60, but like you seem to like take it like a duck to water. But I'm sure as a duck to water, you're really calm on the top, and then underneath your legs are just rotating as fast as they can so you don't sink.
Funny you say that. That's a TGI Fridays motto. It's called the SWAM theory. Above the water, cool, calm, and serene, and underneath, paddling away like fuck.
I use it all the time.
Yeah, so that's apropos. So a couple of things there. One is how did I kind of start the business and how did I go to work? first of all, it's not rocket science. We're not curing cancer or saving babies. It's bars and booze. So there was a degree of kind of just common sense calm, like, the world is not going to fall apart if it's, if the vodka the client wanted wasn't available and we had to get a different vodka, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be okay. So there, I went at it with that kind of sense of calm, I suppose. The other thing was I was determined. I'm sure we all know, or we've all worked for bosses that have been great, and we've worked for bosses that have been terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned more from the bosses that have been terrible than I have the bosses that have been great. The ones that have been great, I've always just said, I must remember to be more like that or do more of those things. The ones that were terrible, like, let me take this and learn from it. One of the life mottos that I live every single day by comes from Nelson Mandela. I never lose. I either win or learn. So in the hard times, when things went wrong, those were real learning opportunities. When things were all going great, it's really easy to be, fat, dumb, and lazy. If the money's coming in and everything's cool and, things are coasting along, you don't apply yourself in the same way as when things are tough. And, today's global situation is testament to that. So that was kind of my attitude. There were a couple of things. One, I wanted to be more like the great bosses that I'd had and less like the assholes along my own professional journey. And the other was I really wanted to be somebody that that people wanted to do business with. And that just meant being honest, reliable, working with integrity and high moral fiber. So that was really where I went at it. I didn't go at it with arrogance or, you need me more than I need you kind of attitude. I went at it that, look, you've come to me. This is what you want. This is how we do it. If you like it, great. If you don't, tell me and we'll fix it. Just kind of, and I tried to go at it with this kind of honest, hardworking humility. And that seemed to work, and it resonated so much with a lot of our clients that we went from, Bar Total went from 0 to almost £500,000 a year in about 18 months. It was pretty insane. And we ended up being retained by Pernod Ricard. And then after I left for Sagatiba, Ed McAvoy took that company and folded it into Create Cocktails, which is now one of the biggest drinks agencies in the UK. And so, I just tried to be the client or the agency that I would want to work with. I know it sounds so simple to say, but there's so many people running around now, a lot of bartenders that will print out business cards saying they're consultants, and off they go into consultant land, and they go at it with an air of entitlement. And when you're in the service industry, I believe, and I'm only speaking for myself, that we need to be in the service industry and service our clients in a way that we would service our guests at a bar. So that was always, how I attacked it, rightly or wrongly.
Nice. So when did you leave Sagatiba?
They left me. No. Sagatiba was kind of a victim of its own success. A lot of years have passed, so I don't mind kind of, I probably haven't actually told this bit of the Sagatiba story anywhere else before. And it's purely my opinion and conjecture, but Sagatiba's main competitor at the time was Leblon Cachaça from Bacardi, and the two brands, Leblon and Sagatiba, had very, very different strategies, targeting the same audience but different strategies. Leblon went straight after the US market, and Sagatiba went after everywhere else almost to the exclusion of the US market. And unfortunately, that was, that paid out better for Leblon than it did for Sagatiba. However, we were in 62 countries, which does, or 64 countries, sorry, which does represent an enormous distribution opportunity for, for another company to purchase. And that's what happened in 2011. Campari bought Sagatiba, made us all redundant. And what I will say, though, as kind of harsh as that might sound, is that Marcos did an incredible thing. He signed over First of all, he wrote off Sagatiba's debt, so the sale was whole and complete, which was incredibly generous. Second of all, he signed an 8-year profit share for every single one of us. So
wow,
I'm still earning from Sagatiba. I get a check every year from Campari. Actually, no, I think that's just stopped now. But anyway, that's an incredible gesture that he didn't have to do. That's literally, comes out of Marcos's own pocket, because he could have pocketed all of that rather than share it with the team. So it's not a huge amount of money. I could have bought an iPad every year if I wanted, but it's the principle that stands behind it, and that taught me a huge lesson, and one that I'm not in a position to do anything about myself just yet, but I hope one day I am, and I will definitely take the lessons that Marcos taught me through that process with me forever. I mean, it was incredibly generous. So 2011 is the short answer, but the slightly longer answer was, up until last year, I was still earning.
That's above and beyond. I don't think I've ever heard anyone in any company, especially maybe up the upper echelons of management, but never everybody on a team that sort of built the brand out to be purchased for the exorbitant amount of money that Campari paid for it back in 2011. So between 2011, I think the last time I saw you was 2018 for World Class Finals in Montreal. When did Sweet and Chilli sort of come into the fray?
After Sagatiba, another hugely influential person in my life is Patrick Borg, the owner of Think Spirits in Australia. Think Spirits were the importer and distributor of Sagatiba for the years from day one until it was sold. And probably around 2008, 2009, Patrick and I had gotten to know each other really well. I was in Australia twice a year in March and September for the various kind of industry tentpole events in Australia. And Patrick had made a promise, in 2009, I think. He said, look, Sagatiba was designed to be sold one day. When that happens, I'm going to make 2 phone calls. The first phone call is to secure another cachaça. The second phone call will be to you, and you and I will work together in Australia. You'll come and work for Think Spirits. And sure as shit, about 2 hours after the announcement was public information, Patrick called me. I think it was the middle of the night in Australia and kind of lunchtime for me in the UK, and said that here it is. I've got a position for you. I want you to start right away. Get on an airplane, pack your shit up, and come and live in Sydney. I'm like, oh my god, I couldn't at that moment deal with it. So I said, look, I think this was maybe September. And I said, I need a little bit of time off. I hadn't had any time off in 9 years, really, with Sagatiba. Yes, it was a great life. Yes, I was bouncing around the world. Yes, it was all the travel and all that, all of that. But, truth be told, and you'll hear any global brand ambassador who's been doing this for a long time say that, that the glitz and glamour is really shallow. It's, it's a very solitary existence. I absolutely loved what I did, and I'm so proud of what we achieved, and I don't regret a single second of any of it. However, it was very lonely out on the road for 9 years by myself. I loved what I did when I got where I was going. I had lots of friends all over the world, an incredible network that includes you and many, many others around the world, and I'm so grateful for it. But the time had come, and I just needed a break. So I actually moved to Bali, spent 2 months in Bali, doing nothing, and it was great. And then I moved to Sydney in November 2011. Started work at Think Spirits from day dot. Patrick funded the work visa, and off to work I went as the trade marketing manager for Think Spirits Australia. And that was the only job I ever had in Australia. It was 7.5 years there, and couldn't have been happier.
Was it really that long?
Maybe 6.5. But yes, it was long.
Yeah, wow. I didn't think it was that long. I thought it was a couple of years. And that's where the infamous as Ryan Lane. I'm watching the comments that come up on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot on my left.
I can't see any of them. So
you can't see anything. So I'm saying, so Phil Bailey says you're a legend, as well as Patrick Borg.
Love that town.
when the cat in the hat gives you a compliment, you have to take it. But is that where the infamous Fernet number plates came from? I'm sort of now piecing together the time in Australia.
Journey. So a little bit like, so in my career, I have always tried to find what it is that I can do that can help me and the company that I'm working for in tandem stand out from the crowd. It's such a busy industry, and there's so many people jumping up and down and screaming and shouting and, you know, about their brands, and, you know, my one's better than your one, or my one's bigger than your one, or whatever it is. And I needed to find that kind of hook that separated me from the crowd. With Sagatiba, it was easy. There were two things. One, the role of the global brand ambassador was quite narrow. There's probably a handful of us, you know, Simon Ford, you know, Charlotte Voisey a little later, you know, but there were very, very few. And then on top of that, I was working in Cachaça. So here I was as one of the very few truly global brand ambassadors working in a pretty unknown category. It just meant that I was basically the only one working in Cachaça, traveling the world. So everyone made time. You know, it wasn't more vodka or more gin or more rum or more tequila or more whiskey. It was, I don't know anything about Cachaça. Sure, come and have a chat. And that's kind of how I managed to carve out not only the role for myself, but an amazing international network. And then in Australia, obviously Sagatiba had left the Think Spirits portfolio. So I was looking at the Think Spirits portfolio. I'm like, how am I gonna take what I've learned and apply it to this new role? And there was Fernet Branca. And the story of Fernet Branca, I gotta tell you this because it's brilliant. It's unbelievable. So Patrick, when Patrick was, before I worked for Think Spirits, when I was still at Sagatiba, we set up this global Sagatiba summit at the Cannes duty-free show in the south of France. So after the film festival, they turned that theater and the Cannes exhibition center over into a duty-free expo, basically. So all the brands and companies that you see in airports around the world all have their own show as well, and it's in Cannes. And so we coupled that with an excuse to pull all our global partners for Sagatiba into the same place at the same time and have this conference. So Patrick was there, and I already knew most of the people there, but I was really good friends with Pat. And after this conference, I was like, Pat, what are you doing? You should come back to London with me, hang out. We'll go to lab. You can see my old London life and it'll be awesome. He's like, shit, yeah, okay, cool. So he like changed all his travel plans and came to London for a few days. So I took him to lab, and we're sitting at the bar at lab, and I cannot make this up. And I promise, as I'm sat here talking to you today, it's true. We're sat at the bar at lab, just shooting the shit, having a drink. And Pat's scanning, you know, the hundreds of bottles on the back bar of lab. And he spots Fernet Branca. He goes, fuck, I just signed Fernet Branca. We're going to be the exclusive importer distributor for Fernet Branca in Australia. I'm like, shut your face. That's epic. 2 shots of Fernet. Let's go. So bartender pours 2 shots of Fernet. Cheers, cheers. Neck it. Pat has a fucking heart attack. What? He runs out. He goes, I got to go find a pharmacy. I got to go find some Mylanta or like, you know, like, what the fuck is that shit? I'm like, Pat, you just told me you signed an exclusive importation distribution deal. Goes, yeah, but I'd never tasted it. How the fuck am I going to sell a single bottle of this shit? I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. How is it even possible? Anyway, true story, I swear.
He's losing his mind on Facebook right now. He's like, I can't believe he's telling my infamous Fernet story.
Man,
well, like that around that year, like Fernet, a decade ago, no one knew what freaking Fernet was. Like maybe San Francisco, but no one really knew what Fernet was even 6-7 years ago.
Well, so that was my Trojan horse for my time in Australia, man, because I knew that if for nothing else, if people didn't remember what I looked like or my name or anything about me personally, they'd remember Fernet Branca. So that became the bottle that went with me to every single bar I visited in Australia. And, you know, the quicker I knew that the quicker I would be known as the Fernet guy, the better. And, you know, we grew Fernet Branca volumes. Pat can correct me on the Facebook feed, but we grew Fernet Branca volumes by I think 8x in 4 years.
Wow.
which is pretty incredible, and became one of the biggest markets for Fernet Branca in the world. And just by being single-minded and focused, yes, I had a portfolio of, it ranged between 25 and 45 brands across my years at Think Spirits, but the one constant in my kind of delivery and execution of my job was Fernet Branca, and it just made us so memorable. And then I brought the Fernet Branca Barback Games to Australia. One of the great things about Pat is you can put what might sound like an absolutely ridiculous idea in front of him, and he might dismiss it initially and then come back to go, hey, that thing that's really stupid, we should really do that. And that's what we did. So the Fernet Branca Barback Games was, flip the idea of what competition could be in our industry, in Australia specifically. And Fernet Branca just became the brand with which I was associated. And then I once that starts, I just push it all the way. So then it's Fernet Branca plates and my car, and
you just go all in.
It got silly, but I absolutely loved it. And I got a bottle of Fernet in my freezer right now. I might run and get it and have a shot with you guys in a minute.
Always. So what made you make the move back to the US? Well, to the US after your time with Think Spirits? What was the next progression in your career?
It's a great question. I was tapped on the shoulder by one of the owners of Think Spirits in Sydney, and in my last few years at Sagatiba, I'd moved over to LA to help with Sagatiba in the US, and I fell in love with the city. I really do enjoy Los Angeles and Southern California. It's an amazing place to live and work. And so I suppose I'd always been working to find a way back here, sort of. I didn't realize that my time in Australia would yield the best friends I have in my life and an incredible life and routine there that I do miss dearly. However, the opportunity to lead and grow a fledgling business in the US was too exciting to pass up. It's a real grind to kind of break the US. It's not easy at all. And I was kind of up for that challenge. I've always loved being the underdog punching up rather than the big guy stamping down. And the challenge was too good to pass up. And it also meant I could move back to LA. It was a real wrench leaving. When the time came, it was really tough. And I had to do a lot of soul searching. And I may never know whether the decision was the right one or the wrong one. What I will say is that moving to LA, I found the love of my life and got married, and so life here is wonderful in a different way than the life I had in Australia. So again, absolutely no regrets. I'm thoroughly challenged, but enjoying and learning every day in the job that I have. Today, I'm director of Sweet and Chilli, and it's allowed me to again really focus on what it is that I'm good at and try and max that out in the US and try and win in this incredibly complex and at the same time maddening and infuriating but awesome place to live and work.
So what is Sweet Chilli? Sweet and Chilli? For the people at home, well, for the people watching on Facebook and whatnot, and people listening to the podcast, what is Sweet and Chilli?
So we are a global drinks agency. We were founded in the UK about almost 20 years ago in London by a guy called Alan Gage. He then quickly started working with a guy called Cameron Northway in the UK. Initially, it was Red Bull and festivals and basically elevating the types of drinks you would get at a festival. And this is 20 years ago. So instead of a warm pint and a shitty vodka Red Bull, you actually got good ice, good service, good banter, quick, efficient, all of those kinds of things that we now often take for granted at these huge music festivals or events. So that's where it kind of started. Then the financial crisis hit, and Cameron is from Sydney. So spotting the fact that Australia was somewhat protected from the financial crisis, Cam moved back into the kind of Aussie bubble and opened Sweet and Chilli Australia there. A very shrewd move. And then about 3.5 years ago, they founded the LLC in the US here in Los Angeles. And a guy called Shay Mutu moved over here to start the business in the US. I joined Shay and the team about 6 or maybe 8 months after they'd kind of kicked off here. And we've grown the business really nicely. You know, we focus on 3 core product offerings, which is serve strategy, trade advocacy, and consumer experience. And what we try to do is kind of weave this, you know, this needle through those 3 things. And it really is fascinating kind of working with these huge global brands on projects like World Class, or, you know, some of the biggest vodkas and bourbons in the world, and gins and tequilas. It's really incredible working on their strategies and how they go to work, and reading the tons of data and insights about, you know, consumer behavior, and trying to find that gem of an idea that will resonate with both the trade and consumers, and then bring it all to life. So there's a lot of strategy, which I really love, a lot of kind of using the stuff between my ears, and kind of really having a think about how brands interact with bartenders specifically. And then on the event side, which is Shay's department, how do we bring all of that to life for consumers as well? So there's lots going on, but you know, if you remember anything about Sweet and Chilli, it's that we have 3 silos of our business: serve strategy, trade advocacy, and consumer experience.
So, as an older industry person, how
Me
do
or you?
I can say it because I'm an old industry person as well. How do you keep pushing yourself and not rest on your laurels? Because I think,
oh my God, I can easily answer that. That's Patrick's fault as well. What wows somebody today will not wow them tomorrow. So we're in this constant cycle of self-development and pushing somebody. If you rest on your laurels, there will be somebody champing at the bit to outdo you, outbid you, outthink you, and it's really, you know, that lesson was drummed home in Australia. You can never sit back and rest on your laurels, because the world is full of really smart, passionate, intelligent people who will fill that void the second that you think you're the winner, baby. So yeah, it's really simple. You know, what impresses somebody today may not impress them tomorrow. So it's this constant cycle of pushing yourself, pushing the boundaries, pulling. You know, the other thing that's really important that I found has worked for me as well is working with a great team that you rely on, and allowing them to totally pick apart your ideas or your strategies. Not pick apart, pressure test. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you put a lot of work into something and you put it in front of your closest colleagues and confidants, and you're like, okay, you know, you need to pressure test this thinking. And that can be quite confronting. And a lot of people have egos that don't allow them to do that. I don't possess one of those. So, you know, the work that we put forward is put forward from a team. Yes, my name might be at the bottom of the email, but you know, the effort that's gone into the work has come from the collaboration of a highly competent and very passionate team of people. And you know, I've got the humility to be able to ask them to go through the work that I'm putting out or proposing and pressure test it, pick holes in it. Tell me where it could be tighter. And especially in America, there are so many. You know, I'll tell anybody who cares to listen that the most ironic collection of words in the English language are United States of America. There is absolutely nothing united about them, especially when it comes to the liquor industry. So you've got, you know, one set of federal laws and then 50 state laws, and then you've got county and city ordinances and nuances that just really mess with having a good time. So, you know, navigating those kind of you know, I'll say it, navigating those perilous waters. I need people on my team that speak that language, because I don't speak it. I can speak it well enough, but when it comes to the nuances of American liquor law, I need to have a team, with us at Sweet and Chilli USA to pick it all apart and build it back together again and make sure we can actually do what we're proposing. So yeah, teamwork, and what wow somebody today won't wow them tomorrow.
Yeah, my mum always told me, regardless of how good you get, there's always someone out there better than you.
Yeah, and I think if you're 100%, and if you're leading a team, if you're in a position of leadership of a business or a team of people, I have always believed in hiring people that are better than me and not being insecure or defensive about that, but managing those people. So I don't need to be the best at everything. I need to know who the best people are and then bring them into the projects that I'm working on. I consider, leadership like the conductor of an orchestra. A conductor can't play all 80 instruments in that orchestra,
Mm-hmm.
but sure as shit, they know how to make beautiful music. And so that's kind of my analogy for business leadership, especially in America. I need a lead violinist, a lead cellist, lead drummer, lead trumpeter, who can all play different parts of this concerto, and then we can go to work. We can put great work out there. Yes, I might be the conductor who presents that work, but the credit is not mine, it's a team.
Steve McDermott just clicked in, said nice to see your faces.
That guy needs a Fernet to his face immediately.
You know that we went to the same high school, right? A year apart.
Did you know we lived a street apart in London for years?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know you. I don't even know how we reconnected, but he's like, yeah, I was a grade below you. I'm like, and my high school, my graduating high school class was 62 kids. So like I went to a small, like little town and a small high school, and he was a grade below me. Crazy. We talked about it a little bit at the very beginning, but what's your outlook and plan for the next 6 to 12 months? And I know that's really hard looking at the macro, but I think that first couple of weeks, like you were saying, like everybody's like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know what's going to happen. And then now everybody's sort of accepting and rolling out like some ideas that are, I think there's going to be some really great innovative ideas coming out of a lot of big brands with big budgets in the next 6 to 12 months. But what's your outlook on life?
So personally, I think it's going to be more of the same. Every day is Blur's Day. Willie, my husband, and I have dropped into an awesome routine at home. I've got my office set up in the bedroom. He's got his office set up in the front room, which is also, his TikTok studio, and it's a bar, and it's a restaurant, and it's a gym, and our front room, literally. It converts throughout the day into various different things. So on the personal side, we've now dropped into this routine that we actually quite like. We're very lucky that the consultancy work has enabled us to be quite relaxed with the financial side of our position, which is a huge relief. So that isn't a concern necessarily, as I know it is for many others. So that's very lucky from our part. So on the personal side, more of the same. Tomorrow's Blur's Day, and the day after that is Blur's Day, and then there'll be another week of Blur, and eventually we will come out of this thing. So then on the professional side, I've been asked this quite a bit. I do a lot of work with the Tales of the Cocktail Foundation. Mm-hmm. I consult with the leadership team for them, on the marketing team. So I've been kind of in on a lot of conversations and meetings, and kind of how's it going to be? What are people going to do? What is the outlook? What are we coming back to? Even when we can open up, what does open up entail? What does it mean? You take cities like New York. Okay, great, you can open your bar, but the rents are so high that those bars can't operate at 50% capacity. They can't be profitable. So there's a lot of things that are still up in the air, and none of us have been through this before. There isn't a model to follow. So I think for me, we will be professionally, I'll be looking to take things very cautiously optimistically. At the moment, events like Coachella in October are still on. I honestly can't see a field of 250,000 people in Palm Springs in October. But, you know, it remains to be seen. I'm cautiously optimistic, though, that once there is a tried and tested vaccine, and, you know, at least 40 to 60% of any particular population gets vaccinated, then things will return to, you know, a semblance of normality. And I think we live in a world now where that turnaround can happen quite quickly. The biggest challenges, I think, are that because so many have been, you know, are unemployed or displaced or lack a solid income, that it's those folks that will continue to struggle, I fear, and that puts a lot of pressure on consumer confidence and the amount of people that are out spending money in bars and restaurants. You know, bars and restaurants are a luxury. It's often the first thing to get cut from a budget, you know, or the type of bar and restaurant that you go out to. So I think there's still a lot for us to figure out and navigate. But I agree with you 100%. I think we will definitely see a lot of ingenuity and ideas generation. One of the things that gives me heart is the example of the lockout laws in Australia. Those were pretty devastating to a few very select geographies in Australia. And it totally changed the landscape of going out quite abruptly. And yet out of the ashes of the lockout laws came some entrepreneurial solutions to what going out is and what it means. We saw the rise of the kind of bar restaurant. And you know, there's a couple of great examples in Sydney where, you know, you've got a fantastic buzzy little restaurant upstairs, and you've got this cool, funky little cocktail bar in the basement. You know, and you could capture 5 or 6 hours of somebody's going out time in a single venue. You know, you could go for dinner and it's really buzzy, then you go downstairs, or you come in, you have a cocktail, and you know, the bar food is excellent because the restaurant upstairs is excellent. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you kick it for, you know, we call it the occasion profile. You know, the occasion is extended. You know, what would have been, oh, let's go here for half an hour, then we'll go over there for an hour, and then we'll go somewhere else for dinner, and then we'll go grab a cocktail for 20 minutes somewhere else. That shifted as a result of small bar operators' ingenuity and spotting the white space in this kind of trauma, and creating businesses and products to fill those white spaces. Go back even further to the smoking ban. I was at Lab when smoking inside bars was banned. Suddenly we had to clean. Like, people boycotted bars because they couldn't smoke in them. There was, you know, it was pretty crazy back then. And, you know, and then suddenly that wedge of lime that got kicked under the refrigerator 4 months ago actually needs dealing with now, because your bar stinks, you know. And there were quick solutions. Some bars couldn't handle it. You know, the carpets they couldn't afford to refurbish and get the stink of stale cigarettes out of their venues, and, you know, businesses were lost. But what came up in their place were smart, entrepreneurial, clever solutions to the challenges confronted, you know, that confronted those entrepreneurs. So I'm always filled with extreme optimism for the ingenuity and insights and passion for entrepreneurs in the hospitality space. There will, you know, the shape of going out may change, and solutions within those new frameworks will be created, and new products and new going out and new ways of, you know, being together and socializing and feeling that common human bond will be made, and those spaces will be created, and we will fill them, and it will be great. What they are, what they look like, I don't have the answer, or when they will come, I don't have the answer. But I don't think that coronavirus is going to permanently and forever change what it is to need and want social connection with the communities around us. And I think it is the bar, the pub, the restaurant, the nightclub. These are the spaces where we are able to feel those connections. I think they are absolutely fundamental to human culture and societal connection. So there will be solutions. They might be different, but they will be awesome, and we will fill them, and we will look back at 2020 and go, you know what, it was fucking horrific at the time, but look what's come out of it.
Dude, I thank you so much for your time. I talked to Charlotte the other day because I did a live stream with Charlotte Voisey just the other day, and coming from a kid from Australia who moved to a small town or a small city in Canada and has had the opportunity to get to meet a lot of people who he saw as peers and mentors coming through his career, and then getting to hang out when you came to Victoria, and the event you did at Tails, that was fantastic, and the rooftop poolside, like that event for me, that was, I think that was one of my first Tails. And there's not many opportunities where, like, my second big trip in North America, and I'm sitting up there having a barbecue with Jim Meehan flipping steaks and Sasha Petresky making cocktails, and you're just like, what did I do to get this? And then now I got a podcast where I get to hang out, and didn't know you went to school for naval and architecture and all that sort of stuff. So I really appreciate your time, and it was great catching up.
Likewise, man. Thanks for the opportunity. Congrats to you. You've done all of those things by like what I said earlier, just by being a decent human being that other people want to be around and interact with, and that's when all is said and done, those are the things that we can look back and be really proud of.
Well, have a good afternoon. I know it's 2:00. I've actually got to get on a Zoom call with Caitlin Stewart in like.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so 5 minutes. We're part of a grants thing here in Canada, and so every Saturday around this time we spend 2 hours going through grants and drinking and chatting and shooting the shit with like Amber Bruce and Alex Black and everybody in Vancouver.
Please,
so
pass on my best wishes and love to them all. That's super cool.
Hey buddy, you have a good afternoon, and give love to your fam. Yeah,
will do, man. Thanks so much.
See ya. Bye.
Take it easy. Bye.